guys, I want to thank you for tuning in for another episode here. Today, I'm actually super excited to be speaking with Yves from EOS Nation, and we've just had a pretty lengthy pre-chat with some really interesting talks. So I'm hoping that we didn't let all the good vibes, the good energy kind of flow out, man. And I want to just say thank you for joining me today. And of course, me being Canadian, you guys are Canadian. I've managed to escape the winter. So I guess my first question is weather there. How's that over?
Well, first of all, man, thank you very much. Like you just said, man, we just had an amazing conversation. I've been watching your show for a while, so to be able to finally be on, and then we started this call a while back now and just been going. I don't think it's done though. I think the passion and the excitement that we've had is going to keep going. This has been really good. In terms of weather right now, I'm excited to say that it's sunny. However, we're I think 2 degrees above zero. And I think tonight it's going in the minuses. So winter is coming in Canada, and not figuratively, but literally winter's coming.
Yeah.
But with winter comes the snow. And if you're a rider, then it's awesome. You can go do some snowboard or whatever, hit the hills. So I'm excited. It's awesome. But I would kind of trade it right now to be in Costa Rica for sure.
Costa Rica, we have our own version of kind of winter. We've got this nonstop rain going on, and I ride too, man. So I miss that. I miss going up to Banff, and I miss going up to kind of like Whistler in the hills with the boys and just doing some riding. But I don't miss the cold. I really don't. I'm proud to be Canadian. I just don't miss the cold.
At some point, 6 months straight of really cold, and especially January, February, where I'm at in Ottawa, it's the valley, so you get really cold winds and it's humid, so it just pierces through whatever layer you have. And when you're 2 months straight of minus 20s, minus 30s, minus 40s, yeah, not great. Yeah, I'd switch that for sure.
Not a good time. Not a good time at all. So we're just getting pelted with rain, but I'm good with it. I'm grateful. I guess we're here today to talk about kind of EOS Nation and all the cool things that you guys are doing. You guys do some really amazing media. You're super engaging with the rest of the community. Your community manager is constantly going and bringing new content and kind of communicating with people and just creating this really cool cooperative environment. I guess if you were to be known for anything within the EOS community, how in an ideal way would you like EOS Nation to be known?
So from the very beginning, our value proposition was that we wanted to add value in any way that we possibly could. We knew right away that we weren't a team of dApps. So how we would be adding value to the ecosystem was not going to be by building a bunch of applications. So we needed to find a different way to be able to bring value to the community. And one of the things that we had and that we knew that we'd be really strong on is bringing a bunch of people to the ecosystem and connecting people together. So if there's one thing that EOS Nation is really good at, is connecting a bunch of different communities all around the world that might not know each other, and different stakeholders in the ecosystem that might not know each other, and bringing that 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, but it equals greater than 2. We're really good at that. And if there's one thing that we want to be recognized for, is definitely that. We, through our network and through the vast network that we have, through our community manager, through ambassador program, we're able to connect different people all around the world, either devs or VCs or just whatever, people that have great ideas, connecting them together to build something that's greater than its individual pieces.
Yeah, and I guess that stems from something that we were talking about in the pre-talk, where we were both talking about traveling as a life experience, right? You spent some time in Japan, and then spent a lot of time kind of connecting people, and then of course, end up here, and once again the cycle repeats itself. So,
for sure.
What are some of the things that kind of define EOS Nation's values and kind of their culture? What are the main things that you guys value within the EOS ecosystem?
So the big thing that we value for us specifically is transparency, integrity, professionalism, and accountability. So everything we do, we always link it back to our values. In terms of transparency, very early on, we said that, this wasn't for everybody, but from a financial point of view, we were going to be financially transparent from day one. We're all self-funded, and pretty much literally 100% of all the rewards we get are going back into the ecosystem. We do not take salaries. We haven't made anything out of this really, other than just going back and giving back to the community. and everybody can track all of this. So one of the greatest things that we've done, I think, is from our community engagement fund. So far, we've donated over 7,000 EOS to different projects in the community, either from community engagement perspective, so conferences, or applications that require that little extra boost just to deploy their smart contracts, or applications that have great white papers, then they need to be connected to a VC. We don't have the VC, but we'll make that connection. So all those little things that we've been doing, we always relate it back to transparency, so everything can be on chain. And the way that we do that as well is really from a professional point of view. We try to make every single connection that we have as professional as possible, so that we're not back into the days of 2017 ICO rush and kind of just trying to shill anything and everything. We really try to give as much value back to the community from a professional perspective, so that it really does do something. It really does bring value. And then again, accountability and integrity, everything we do. One of the big things that we pride ourselves on is being accessible. So just like doing these interviews, everybody knows who we are in terms of putting a face behind the person. We're in live meetups all around the world. We've now done, I think we ourselves have hosted 38 or 39 meetups by now. And we've been a part of, if you count those and you count what we've been a part of, I think we're over about 60 different meetups worldwide. So we're definitely accessible. So that accountability and that integrity perspective, we find that being in touch with our community one-on-one and in person makes a really, really big difference when people can relate to who they're, you know, who's behind the team. We're not always behind a camera, we're in person. We find that makes a really big difference. So everything we do relates back to those 4 values.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, like, you guys do some amazing social media. We're going to talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah, shout out to Elam, by the way, like really good.
Yeah, and he's a heck of a guy too. I really like him. He's super engaging, super approachable, and also super supportive.
Yeah,
which is one of the reasons why I love EOS Nation. You guys do some really, really cool content that we're going to get into. And just like different videos and educational resources and you know, a lot of these meetups. But I guess first we had a really, you know, we had a lengthy conversation before we started this, and I learned a lot about you very, very quickly. And I think that the people might want to hear a lot of the things that we're kind of discussing. Like, ultimately, Yves, how did you get here? You know, how did you go from being little Yves to you know, to creating a blog producer and so involved in the EOS community?
I've been asked this question. So when I was in China, I did a TEDx talk, and it was kind of it was Google entrepreneur TEDx, and that was one of the questions they asked, and they said, "How did it really all get started?" And I had to think long about it, and the weird answer is it all started with my uncles. So I told you this when we were talking previously. I grew up in a really large family in terms of my parents both have a lot of siblings, and I had a lot of uncles. And these uncles were in the software engineering space, hardware engineering space, electrical engineering space. They were in computer development. Like, they were in the 70s and in the 80s, some of the pioneers in Canada in Silicon Valley North. So I was really lucky to be able to grow up in that environment, so that when I was 6 years old, I built my first computer. And I always had the opportunity to have access to those materials in order to tinker with hardware specifically. So I started tinkering with hardware, and then one thing led to another. Started getting into BBSs, started coding, programming when I was really young, building websites, and then I started getting to the overclocking world. It was always one thing after the next, and I always really love that relationship between humans and computers. And there was something special for me from where I grew up to be able to connect to the outside world. So I remember being able to connect with my BBSs to people that I didn't know, but you made these new connections, and you were online, and you know, before anybody was talking about you know, chatting software and everything that kind of blew up in terms of social media in the 2000s, I was doing that in the 80s, and I was doing that early 90s. And for me, that was my gateway to the outside world. That was my gateway to different perspectives, to people thinking differently than me, and being able to see things in a different light maybe than in my own little bubble. And I just love that. And so we took that with us with EOS Nation. One thing led to another. 2010, I started mining Bitcoin, sold it all. So I have to give that disclaimer. Everybody always asks. I do not have left over 2010 Bitcoin. But I started doing that, and I really like the idea of this global decentralized economy and this peer-to-peer, finally borderless transactions in a way. And so I just really love that concept. And then kind of got out of that space a little bit, came back into it in 2016, started teaching and started being part of crypto asset groups, just talking about the space again. It was reinvigorating. I was getting that vibe and that energy that was present like in 2012, 13. It was coming back in 2016. And one of our co-founders really got me back into this. So shout out to Steph. So yeah, so we got a group of 7 super passionate co-founders that got together, and we all were coming from different backgrounds. So we've got architects, we've got engineers, we've got a developer, we had people in politics and administration. And then we just thought we were all passionate about EOS, and we all had different things that we could bring to the table. And they had been like, some of the people had started the EOS Facebook group months previously. So I think they started relatively like October 2017. They were all in EOS and like, we need to become a block producer, guys. There's so much opportunity here. This is such a wonderful space. And we all agreed that the community in EOS was just at the next level and it was ready. And that's where we thought, and we still believe, that blockchain 3.0 and where the internet 3.0 and where like what's going to bring blockchain to mainstream adoptability, it's with EOS. So we all had that passion. We all had that common grounds. We're like, all right, let's do it. And yeah, we launched in March, early March, like late February, early March 2018. And the rest is history. It's been a crazy journey ever since.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people that I talk to, when I ask them a similar question, they're like, well, I wanted to be a marine biologist, but you're making computers when you're 6 years old. So this is kind of like, this is a match made in heaven. And we did also talk about how amazing the community is and how surprised I am. It is, man. And everybody's willing to talk and everybody is excited about what's happening. And EOS is so new and the capabilities just haven't been matched before, man. So it's,
we haven't scratched the surface of what we're going to be able to do with this particular software, with this particular blockchain, right? It's amazing.
It really is.
And then part of what we're going to be able to do stems from the fact that we have such a strong community behind it that's just so passionate about this particular project. And I think one of the greatest strengths is that we all talk to each other. Like if you've been in other blockchain projects, there's nothing like this in terms of people. The way that Dan set up the incentives, the way that the block producers work, the way that you bring value to the ecosystem is just bar none. It's an amazing thing because it gets people to compete against each other, but at the same time collaborate with one another for clean incentives on the other side. And everybody's got a role to play. It's amazing.
It really is. And the community is incredible. As I said, I'm shocked at how willing, somebody is to speak. I was just an enthusiast not too long ago, and there's just so many opportunities in the space to like come in and do your best to kind of provide some value. And then, now of course my career is running the way of EOS, involved with Trybe and a few other projects. And it's such a whirlwind, and it's funny because I think that for anybody who's thinking about doing videos or trying to provide some value, there's so many opportunities to do so, and people are so easy to connect with, and they're so excited about what's going on. So it's just a really fun, cool time to be in EOS.
For sure, man. You fell in the rabbit hole just like everybody else, right?
Yeah, we had a lengthy conversation about that. I went to buy a little bit of EOS because I thought maybe it would be a cool investment, and then after Genesis, I'd sell it. And then I ended up selling all my other assets. This has become my life. So and I'm glad it has. I guess
awesome.
People might want to know about the name EOS Nation. It's kind of conducive to what we were talking about, but where does the name EOS Nation come from?
So it's got there's a couple of stories behind it. So when we first started talking about this, we had already, the group of 7, our co-founders, which originally we were more than 7. So there's other stories behind that. But when we finally decided, all right, this is the group that we're going to work with, this is kind of where we want to head, this is our mission, this is where we're going to add value to the ecosystem, we were torn on names. So at the time, there were very few block producers. We were one of the first ones that announced. And the block producers that had announced at the time were all linked to a particular city or a country. And at the time we were thinking we could be EOS Canada. Now we know we didn't choose EOS Canada. But at the time we were thinking, why wouldn't we be EOS Canada? And part of what we wanted to do is, in the first part anyways, even still in March, we were thinking of being decentralized. So we were thinking of doing a DAC, similar to what EOS DAC was doing. But we pushed the envelope. We did this about, I talk about this with Michael Yates from EOS DAC quite a bit. Every time I see him, I'm like, you remember we were supposed to be a DAC too. And then we decided that we wanted to keep that DAC principle. We wanted to remain decentralized, but at the same time, we wanted to have a core group of people that were going to remain and keep adding value. And so we decided not to go the full-on DAC, but we did a hybrid. And our hybrid comes through our ambassador program. And we wanted to keep that. So while thinking about this, we're thinking, well, if we become EOS Canada, or if we're EOS Ottawa or Montreal or Toronto or whatever, because all our founders are kind of on the East Coast, shout out to Dave, who's in Texas as well. We were thinking, if we pick a specific place, how is that going to fit in with our ambassadors? Or how is that going to fit in with the rest of the people around the world that we want to onboard in this decentralized experiment? And Facebook at the time already had the EOS Nation name. So like, all right, well, we already have this name. It already makes sense. If you want to be part of EOS, anybody can be part of EOS and everybody can be part of EOS, what would become EOS Nation. The name made sense. And then my background as well, I'm First Nations in Canada. And so for me, it had a personal touch of EOS Nation being First Nations. So everything just kind of fell in place. And we really thought anybody around the world will be able to take part in this experiment together in this BP. If it's called EOS Nation, it just makes sense because it doesn't matter where you are. And we stuck to our name. That's what we chose. And it's proven really successful in terms of bringing people together through our ambassador program. I do not think that we would have had the same level of success if we would have picked like a specific locale or specific area.
And it also, even though you are EOS Nation, it's also kind of very Canadian values because Canada is so more accepting. So
Yeah.
It works really well together. Like I get kind of the whole the whole philosophy. I think it's a really cool thing, man. One thing that you guys do really well too is you provide links kind of in between the East and the West, right? Yeah. How does that work? How are you guys helping to provide those links and connect the two communities?
So so myself, after graduating university years ago now, I decided to go and hop on a plane and move to Japan. And the idea was that I was going to be doing this for a year, travel around, do some surfing, maybe teach some English, whatever, just go explore after university. I'd gone and I'd hitchhiked out west, did some cherry picking out in BC for a while. And I just really liked the idea of being somewhere else where you don't know anybody, where you are like completely unaware of the language, the cultural norms, and you just have to kind of figure it out. And through those experiences, I quickly realized that there's a bunch of really, really good people out there, and we all want very similar things, but we approach it in a very different way. And so one of Dan's premises that he mentioned when he was creating EOS was that as a whole, like the premise is that most human beings, the vast majority of human beings are well-intentioned. And I really got to be able to live that through my travels. And so when we started building EOS Nation and when we started, before we got to mainnet, the idea was, listen, we're seeing this divide that's starting to be created prior to launch. If you remember, prior to launch, like there was a little bit of divide going on in the channels. There was a little bit of, not a little bit, there's actually like racial rhetoric. Like it was like trying to separate this community. And from our point of view, the community was one of the greatest assets. So if there's anything that we could do as EOS Nation to really build those bridges and like strengthen those bonds, we would get on it. And because I'd lived in Japan previously, I had Asian experience, I decided to hop on a plane and go to China. And through our ambassador program, we had an ambassador there who's a German expat living in Chengdu, Martin, shout out to Martin, and he organized a trip for me. So, I'd only met him through a video teleconference or whatever, but I landed, he took me around and we started visiting China, and I spent 3 weeks on my first trip there. And I just I started to meet a bunch of different block producers that we hadn't really heard of, or that we had heard of, but we didn't really know what they were doing. And then finally meeting them in person and seeing all the great work that was emanating from China, and how crazy the EOS scene was in China, how much work that was being done over there, and being able to report that back to the West, and seeing how that was so powerful for the community to see that, yeah, we've got language differences, we've got cultural differences, but we're all aiming for the same goal. And that's to make EOS the best damn blockchain out there, and just to grow the space and to be able to make it really strong. And so it made perfect sense. So I went on a second trip as well. This time I spent a month. So after mainnet launch, I was there mid-July to mid-August, so another month. So I spent 53 days in China in the last 3 months.
Awesome.
And then while on my second trip, I met a bunch of other guys that were also doing the same thing. So either they were Asian and spending a bunch of time in North America, or likewise in North America or in Europe, spending a lot of time in Asia. And then we formed Link. So big shout out to the original founders of Link. So the Link.one, if you want to go check it out, it's an organization that I'm part of. I'm part of the founders of that organization. We've got Marshall Long from BP Fish. Shout out to Marshall Long, big Texas bad boy. We've got Dafeng Guo, who's in EOS Asia, amazing guy, and Joe Frenelli. So both of them are working for Strikingly. Both of them are in EOS Asia. Amazing guys, super good. And a little announcement here to make. Link is expanding. So we're gonna, by the time this gets released, Link is now has taken on as well, and we've collaborated, we've partnered with Liquid EOS, Benny from Liquid EOS. He's now being added as one of the founders. They had just developed Project EOS Bridge, so very similar initiative, try to connect East and West. So we're all joining into one, we're expanding, we're making this stronger. So you're the first one to find out. The release is going to be tonight. So by the time you release this, it's going to have happened. And again, the idea is we want to keep this space as solid and as tight as possible. We all come from the backgrounds where we've seen how different people interact in this ecosystem, and we all are old enough to remember what's happened with Bitcoin, with Ethereum, and how that split really divides the community, and how keeping that community as one is so powerful. So that's one of the things that we want to do, and that's one of the things that we're able to do as EOS Nation through our ambassador program, is really get a sense and a pulse throughout the world of different viewpoints. We're talking about, this world has so many unbanked in the world. One of our main objectives at EOS Nation is to ensure that they have a seat at the table and they get their voices heard. And so through our ambassador program, we're able to get that information and then relay that to the block producer table. And that's just one of the examples, but we've got so many different people in different spheres through our ambassador program, and then through Link as well. We're able to get that whole pulse and try to really relay kind of what the world's thinking, what people are thinking all around, and really form a viewpoint with that. And I think that that's so incredibly powerful. Because then instead of being segregated, working in silos and kind of splitting up and going to do our own things, which is very common in the POW, proof of work world, I think that for delegated proof of stake and for EOS, we really need to keep building those bonds.
Yeah, I have to agree. And I think that it's important because we're stronger, right? The more support we have, the more people involved, more people working on the same things towards the same goal as opposed to against each other, the quicker that goal. So it makes sense to me, man. And I really I appreciate the way that you guys are doing that. I think it's cool. And I also happen to be a fan of Marshall. I've got him on the line for an interview. Part-time comedian, part-time miner, part-time.
No, it's like full-time comedian. Marshall's amazing. Marshall just says it as it is all the time. Like he's all in all the time, but he's the nicest guy. He's so nice. He's so real. And I think that that's what people appreciate from him. He's just real. He's like, what you see is what you get. There's no bullshit. That's what it is. And he's so nice. Great guy.
For sure. Let's move on to I wanted to kind of ask you a question about the current state of EOS. What's good? What needs improvement? What's working within the ecosystem right now? And what do we need to kind of focus on to really improve?
I think that, I guess I'll start with the what needs to be improved, because I think that leads to, at the same time, what's really working. So I think right now, one of our biggest challenges is that we're very reactive in a way. So there's always the flavor of the day in EOS. So something gets posted, there's a bunch of FUD, there's whatever happens. And then as the community, especially as the blog producers, we then like all go in our separate ways, and then we all do different things. And then instead of tackling the issue or whatever's happening as one. So I think that that's one of our biggest weaknesses, is that we're really reactive right now, and we're not very patient, which is also in a way one of our greatest strengths. We are not patient, and everybody is working day in and day out to make this space grow and grow in an efficient, in a sustainable way. And that leads us to be very impatient, because we see so much work needing to be done, and we're all trying to get there. I think we need to slow things down, need to be more patient, and work as one. So it goes back to that principle of competitive collaboration, which I think is one of the greatest assets of EOS. We're all in a competition against another, but at the same time, we're all incentivized to work with one another. And that competitive collaboration, I think, is one of the strongest incentives that we have in EOS, that it makes it a challenge in a way, but at the same time, it's what's going to lead us to achieve amazing things.
Yeah, future looks good. It's exciting, and it's cool to see that people actually do. Like, you're not just blowing smoke. Like, I've talked to you behind the scenes. I get a really good sense of your personality. I know that you're a good guy. I know that you're passionate, and I also really know that you genuinely care about bringing people together to make things happen in the space. Like, this is not this is from the heart. So I respect that.
This is all in for us. Like, this is our life. This is what we do all day in, day out. Like, this is us.
I know, and it's a beautiful thing. I never imagined that I would be that I would kind of become a part of that, but it's so brilliant. I really enjoy doing what I do, and connecting with people like you, and kind of doing some work on various projects. You guys do a lot of content creation. Like, you guys are constantly pumping out stuff and recruiting people and pulling people together. What would you say, like, the one or the two favorite pieces, whether it's a movie or whether it's an article that you guys have produced so far? What's like the one that really sticks out to you as kind of like,
I think in terms of tangible projects, the one that I'm most proud of, and the one that I think brings the most amount of value to directly a group of people, is our blockchain hub in Nigeria. Through our ambassador program, we got to meet some amazing people in Nigeria months ago. So we had a flood of Nigerian applications when we first launched the program. I think it was in April or so. And we went through so many interviews, and we met some amazing people. And we've built this relationship. So if we're talking about April now, it's been 6 months. So we built a relationship with 4 of our ambassadors specifically that come from Nigeria. And they started working together. They're amazing at social media management. A lot of them came from the old Steemit world. Well, I shouldn't say old, the Steem is still there. From the Steemit world, where they were Steemit ambassadors. And they're full of ideas, amazing ideas. And for them, so little goes such a long way. Like, they're used to doing with so little. And finally, because of our positioning as a BP and the amount of resources that we could help them to achieve certain projects, they were just throwing project after project our way. Like, we could do this, we could do this. And it finally culminated to what we just launched on September 22nd, a blockchain hub in Nigeria, where we have a locale. We've got the space itself for a year. We've got the electricity. We're paying the electricity. We're paying computers. We're paying for the internet. There's air conditioning. There's desks. It's like a classroom style. And then we've got a bunch of different people that are contributing their time to make it into a week-long course. So it's a 7-day course. People come in, they start learning from the very beginning, like just how to log on to the internet, maybe for some, to like what's a blockchain, and then what can you do with that, and then what's EOS, all the way to how to code a smart contract. And so this program for me is one of our biggest achievements in terms of actually doing something tangible for people. That's definitely one. In terms of articles or movies or media that we did, I think the article that stands out for me that I refer to quite a bit is the Medium article that I posted, I think it's about 6 months ago now, 5 or 6 months ago, called Through Diversity, Strength Emerges. And to reposition that article, Bitfinex had just announced, I think on that day, I think I posted it 2 hours or so after Bitfinex announced that they were going to be players in the ecosystem and that they were going to be, running as a block producer. And everybody knew that at some point the exchanges were going to come in and they were going to announce themselves. We just didn't know when. We didn't really know who. Bitfinex was an obvious player. I mean, they invested heavily in EOS prior to, so we kind of knew that was coming. They had talked about EOS Finex, etc. And right away, we took the position because it was a big thing at the time. People were saying exchanges shouldn't be block producers, and they're just going to buy their way in, et cetera, et cetera. But we took the position from the very get-go, and I know that this is controversial for some, but we truly believe this, and we've seen the power of this, is that we think that the ecosystem requires a bunch of different players. So I'm not able to do what you're able to do, and then you're not able to do what somebody else is able to do, and we all bring something different to the table. And one of the analogies that I used when I wrote that article, and then that I use frequently when I talk about this, is that of we're building a human being, and we can't all be eyes, we can't all be ears, we can't all be arms. We need eyes, a nose, a mouth, a brain, 2 arms. We need a bunch of different people that bring something different to the ecosystem. And if we're all eyes or we're all ears, sure, we'll get somewhere. But through that diversity, through the very different capacities, capabilities that we can bring to the ecosystem, I think it might be slower, but once we do attain where we're wanting to go, that diversity is going to be so powerful and so strong. And I think that article really encapsulates from the very beginning what EOS Nation was about. It's about being accepting from people from all over and really taking into account that we can't all do the same thing in the ecosystem. Everybody has a key role to play.
Yes. I love it. And it, for me, I appreciate what you're saying, because coming from a non-technical background, then ultimately being able to turn EOS and cryptocurrency into a career is mind-numbing. And it's just the response that you keep getting is that everybody has a different part to play and everybody has different abilities. I understand where you're going with that. I wanted to ask you about some of and they are only allegations, right? Nothing, I think people jump to conclusions without proper proof, but some of the BP collusion allegations, what's your opinion on those?
So again, it goes back, I think you're talking about specifically, there's been allegations against Huobi lately. I was, what day are we? We're Wednesday now. I was in Toronto on Monday, and I went to meet with the CEO of Huobi Canada. And again, through my travels in China, I got to meet Huobi and Denny specifically, and then the CEO of Huobi Global while I was there. And so I got to tackle those issues directly with them. And I get to ask them, straight up, are you doing this? You can lie to my face if you want, but it's very different from asking in a Telegram group to asking somebody while you're on video teleconference, and somebody that you've built a relationship with. Yeah. And they assure me that they're not doing, that they're not doing vote trading. Now, are they lying? I can't tell you that. I personally do not think that they'd be doing this. And the reason why I don't think that they'd be doing this is that their reputation is at stake. So if I take it from a global exchange perspective, if we're looking at Huobi right now, because they're the ones that are being named in the EOS-1 report, the second one, because Bitfinex was named in the first one, the allegations are that they're making a couple of hundred EOS per day from these different BPs. And I also asked the BPs that are being named in this straight up if they're doing it, and they also deny this. Again, I can only take their word for it. But if I look at from a reputational perspective, Huobi is making roughly right now, I think it's $650 million per day in trading volume. In terms of how much that relates to their bottom line in terms of operational income, we're talking about a shitload of money. Yeah. And so for them to be able to break their reputation off of maybe a couple of $1,000s, it just makes no business sense. Why would you do this? So from a business perspective, I think it makes no sense. From a reputational perspective, that's just shooting yourself in the foot. Why would you do this? Now, at the same time, why haven't they come out against this? So they did publish some one article, and they did do some Telegram chats to say they didn't do this, and they're going to be doing an investigation. They're going to be releasing more information. Where I think we need to go as a community is this is not going to be the first time, and it won't be the last time. And right now, the exchanges are being targeted because they're obvious targets. If I'm going to attack somebody, I'm not going to go attack BP number 60. I'm going to go attack the BP that's at the top, that potentially, if I attack them, I might gain something from it. But BP 60 or whoever's, you know, in the lower ranks is not necessarily going to give me that edge if I take them down. I think as a community, what we need to do is stop reacting so quickly to allegations like that, and really take a step back and think, okay, what can we do? Because what can we do as a community in order to avoid this happening? And or if this happens, what type of response can we come up with as a community? And we saw this happening in the days after the allegations against Hobie. People, the mindset shifted from, oh my God, let's condemn them, to, okay, they need to deal with their stuff, and they need to come out, and they need to make a statement, or they need to do something because it affects the whole ecosystem. But what can we do? And the mindset really shifted to what can we do, and how can we encourage them to come out, or how can we encourage them to maybe be more transparent, so that there's less type of FUD like that goes towards them. And we really got to see the community band together. And I think over time, we're going to see more and more of that. The community is going to strengthen and say, listen, we're all in this together. An allegation against one is an allegation against all of us, because we're letting this happen, or we're not, as a community, we're not as solid. And we need to come together to think, what are we going to do when these types of situations happen? Because it's not the last time. And what can we do to encourage these different players so that we get less of that? And I think a big part of that is transparency. It's messaging. It's communication. It's working together. Again, if we don't know who these players are, we're probably more likely to accept those allegations from the get-go. If we know who they are, because we know they bring value to the ecosystem, because we've had meetings with them, because we've collaborated on projects with them, we're going to be less likely to believe that FUD, and more likely to work together to actually build a solid community, communication approach on the outside. Because there are players outside of EOS that have incentive for EOS to fail. We can't forget that. So internally, we need to stick together as much as possible, because if we start breaking apart, that's exactly what some people on the outside might want. We need to remember that we're playing in the big leagues now. This is really important. And sticking together, and again, through diversity, that strength emerges, I think is where we're going to come out on top. But it's growing pains. We're still new. We're only a couple of months in as a community. This is a process. This is a journey. If I relate it back to Bitcoin and Ethereum, we're way ahead. For the amount of time that we've spent together and the relationships that we've built, we're way ahead of the other players. So let's just keep heading in the direction that we're heading in, which is being open, transparent, accepting, and just communicating. It's all about communicating.
I love it. It's a good response. And you're right. We are so new. You know what I mean? And it's going to take everybody in the game. And that's one of the, like I said, that's one of the things that I love about this community. Let's talk about the roadmap a little bit. So clearly right now you're reaching out, you've got an amazing ambassador program, you're engaging people, you're engaging the East, you're engaging the West, you've got people doing amazing things over in Africa and all places in the world. What's some of the things that are coming up, and then what are some of the things that you're considering in the future roadmap?
So the big project that I'm personally working on, and that a lot of our founders are working on, in the I guess more immediate time frame, is the referendum tool. And so Daniel Yves, our COO, has been project managing the referendum tool now for a couple of months, and our CTO Denis has been working on the vote tally portion of the referendum tool now for a little bit, and it's proven to be quite challenging. He's been doing an amazing job at pushing this. So in the short term, we're going to be able to see, for the first time, really giving the community a formal voice on chain. As much as like we're talking in the community, in the channels on Facebook, on social media, you know, on Telegram, on Twitter, Medium, Steam, and etc. There's no formal voice on chain, and that referendum tool is going to be the first time that we're going to be able to poll the community and actually move things together formally on chain. And EOS Nation is a huge part of this. And we're really, really excited because we're only a couple of days away. I mean, last night the team, so there's a bunch of different people. It's not just EOS Nation. There's a bunch of different players, a bunch of different VPs that are contributing to this project. They got on a call, and the idea is that next Tuesday around the same time, they're going to be having a go no go vote, similar to the mainnet vote that we had early in June, or the votes that we had early in June. So they're going to be doing something very similar to say, all right, are we ready to actually formally announce this? And that's happening next Tuesday. And in all likelihood, I believe that it's pretty high likelihood that it's going to result in a go vote, and that this tool will be released for the public. And what that means is that people will be able to submit questions or referendum questions on chain, and then have that through various UIs. So there's a bunch of different websites that are working on this, and different teams that are working on the UI portion of this. But they'll be able to go in the back end, submit that question, and then people will be able to participate for the first time. So I think short term, that's amazing. And that's, I think, is going to be one of the largest upgrades that we've had. If not the largest from a governance perspective, this is, in my opinion, the largest upgrade that we've had since launch. So that's huge. From a longer-term perspective, medium long-term perspective from EOS Nation, one of the things that I've been working on is, through my travels and through our ambassador network, we've met a bunch of different stakeholders that have something of value that they can provide. Now, they themselves are only one key part of the puzzle. And what we're doing, and we're really close, and we've got this whole mapped out. We're going to have a bunch of different people in the ecosystem that bring different capabilities, competencies to this project that we're building on. And the idea is, we're going to have some VC funds. We're going to have a bunch of developers. Right now, we've got about 300 devs that are on board in this project in 3 different areas of the world. So we've got Silicon Valley, we've got Canada, so Silicon Valley North, with Toronto, a little bit Ottawa, and then we've got in Central Europe as well. And then we've got funds, so hedge fund managers that are going to be managing some of this. We've got some smart contracts that are going to be integrated in this. And all of these pieces are going to come together to be able to offer a solution. And we've got exchanges in this as well. They're going to be able to offer a solution where, from start to finish, you've got an idea. You need people to start developing on it. You need advisory help to maybe write your white paper, write your yellow paper, and really figure out what the token economics are going to be of your project, and or how you're going to adapt this to EOS if you're on another chain or something like that. To then be able to potentially, if you're looking for funding, have access to funding, go through an algorithm and maybe spit out a rating to see, all right, is this a valuable project? If no, what do you need to go back and work on? Then to be able to start working on that MVP, get that MVP deployed, have access to community, all the way to, in the end, being listed on an exchange. And so this whole continuum, this whole kind of step-by-step continuum, we've now partnered with so many different people in the ecosystem. We're almost there. And that's the one that I'm most excited about, because it's a huge undertaking. Like, I've been working on this now for months, and to have the right people in the right places and everybody benefiting from this has been taking a lot of my time, but it's, I think, something that's going to add so much value to the ecosystem.
Yeah, it's funny because I think that was the intention, right? The block producers were supposed to support dApps. And my next question was going to be, why should people vote for you? But I'm going to skip it because I don't think that it's necessary. I think you guys are just providing so much value in so many different places. I think the reason why people should vote for you is plainly obvious. And the fact that you guys are creating this little process to kind of help dApps walk them through, it's just another one of the contributions. Since I really started digging into EOS Nation, I've just been nothing but impressed by the way that you guys are conducting business.
Thank you.
Community. It's really, really cool. I'm going to move to something a little bit more personal, because we talked quite a bit before, and I know how interesting you are and just some of your philosophies and the traveling and you know, some of the things that you've done. What would you say maybe the most influential book that you've read in your entire life to kind of mold you this way has been? What's the most influential read you've ever consumed, and why should people read it?
I'm quite the book consumer. I love reading. I read quite a bit. But I would say, yeah. I was doing a challenge last couple of years where I was trying to read 30 to 50 books a year, and I was attaining those goals. And so I read quite a bit. I love reading, and I think that everybody should be reading. The more you read, I think you expand your horizons and just eat that knowledge. The book to this day that still remains my favorite book, and that I encourage everybody to read, so simple, so small. It's called The Little Prince by Alexandre de Saint-Exupéry. It's a tiny book. I don't know if you've read it. It's about the little prince. And I think where it becomes more and more valuable as I grow older, it's all about morals. It's all about the potential of dreaming. It's about human interactions. It's about your responsibility as a human being. But the way that the book is written is super small. I think it's like a 50 or 100-page book. It's written for kids. I read this, I think, when I was maybe 6 years old, 7 years old the first time. And I try to reread it every year because it really brings me back to what's important in life and why I wake up in the morning and why I do everything I do. So I encourage everybody to go read that book, The Little Prince.
Little Prince. It's now on my reading list. I've actually heard it referred to before. I know it's kind of allegorical for a lot of other things in life. If you could change one thing, right? Like all of a sudden somebody grants you a power and they're like, Yves, you could change one thing about the world, whatever you want. Here you go. I'm going to give you the power. You can do it. What would that one thing be?
I think I'd give everybody the opportunity, especially in, I guess, because my perspective is coming from a Canadian who grew up in, in a good family. I was fortunate to be able to, go to school, to have access to resources, didn't have to worry about, whether or not I was going to have a roof over my head, or whether or not I was going to have, food at the end of the day. So I would say that for other people in my position, and especially like in Canada, in the United States, in the Western world, in developed countries, in areas where people have access to funds and they really don't have to worry about that stuff, I would say for them, travel. If I could somehow get everybody the opportunity to go somewhere real and experience the world, and experience world in a different way that they're used to see that their bubble is really just a bubble, but there's tons of other people that are living differently in the world, and that you can affect change, and that you're able to change your perception by traveling. I think that's the thing that I would change the most. Really get people out of their bubble.
We spoke about that earlier, and for me, it's been one of the most, I spent some time at university. I did well in school, but I knew nothing about anything until I traveled and saw the way that people who, and I've spoken about this in other interviews, people who have nothing are happy. They grab a little picnic basket, they take the kids to the beach, and they embrace the community, and they just embrace family. And in North America, we talked about it, right? We work very hard to buy shit that we don't need, to impress people we don't like. And
it's all about like the needs versus the wants. And then people are just not, once you travel, I think it gives you, and we spoke about this earlier, you're the one who mentioned this specific word, it gives you that sense of gratitude. You start being grateful for what you have, because you see that you're so fortunate. Once you get that feeling of gratitude, that humility, then comes along humility, and then you're able to pass it forward and be able to give it back. And it's working towards something that's just greater than what we typically see people working for right now in the Western world. That gratitude is so powerful. You hit it on the head earlier when you said that word. I think it's all about gratitude.
It really is. We get so stuck in we have these blinders on. We don't know our neighbors. We don't engage with anybody. We stick to our phones when we're in public spaces. And that's cool, because that's the way of the future. But at the same time, travel, get out there, because the world is a beautiful place. And there's no greater travel It is, man. And there's no greater tragedy than not being able to experience it with your life because you're so busy just moving, right?
And you realize as well how, in general, like the vast majority of human beings, how good they are.
Yeah.
Really, like this idea that everybody's always out to get you, and because you don't know them, most likely they're bad, and or because you don't understand it, then you think that, you know, it's bad in a way. Or just to be able to open that and unclick that little portion in yourself to be able to see that, yeah, most people are really good. Most people are inherently, they want to do good. Once you get that, it changes your whole perspective.
It really does. You guys have a huge range of really amazing social media, of course, that helps kind of compile and get together. So
Sure.
I'm going to link to everything, including like your website. All your YouTube videos are amazing. And you guys just do a really great job of communicating with everybody else and keeping that out there. So I do recommend.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the best resources in EOS if you're looking for information, news, updates. And Elam does a heck of a job. I really like that guy. So
He does, yeah. Elam's amazing. He started off as an ambassador, and when we were looking for community managers, just it was a right fit. It was such a no-brainer. His way, his mannerisms, like him as a person, amazing. And then on top of that, you just add the fact that he's passionate about EOS and he works like a madman and he's always in. It just like it's perfect combination. So again, shout out to Elam.
Absolutely, I love that guy. I'm going to let you continue. And normally I say quest for world domination, but I think it's very different. I'm going to say global unification. I'll allow you to head off and continue your quest for that. But do you have any final words for the EOS community or anything you'd like to say?
I would say, like, just keep an open mind, keep working together. We've got something so good going on. I shouldn't say don't. I'd say we've got something so good going on. Keep it. Keep working in that direction. Keep working day in and day out to make this community the best community we have, because that's one of our greatest assets. And once we get out and once we have kind of the foundations built, which is what we're doing right now, and once that's solidified, and the rest of the world is ready for blockchain, we'll be there ready and waiting. So keep that in mind, like keep working together.
You, sir, are amazing. And I hope that we can do this again. I think we're really aligned in a lot of our personal philosophies. And I think that EOS Nation is doing a really great job. And I think that people should definitely consider you for their voting and just go out and look into some of the things that you guys are doing, because you're really contributing and making a difference out there. And I really feel like you're going to continue to do that moving forward. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking, and I look forward to doing it again soon.
Likewise, it's been a pleasure talking with you, and I look forward to coming on this show again. And I look forward to meeting you in person. Like, it's one of those things, we spoke now for hours. I'm looking forward to shake your hand and just actually like maybe having a drink with you or something like that. So thank you very much. Thank you for all the work that you do. The amount of videos that you produce and the amount of knowledge that you share through your videos is amazing. So thank you very much from everybody at EOS Nation and from the whole community. Cheers.
Man, it's a pleasure. And we'll do it again soon, and I'll be back to Canada. We'll have a beer. Consider it done.
Awesome.
Okay, see you later, my friend.